back to The Table, the podcast where we dive into the real stories and strategies behind building a brand and doing it on your own terms. I'm your host and strategic marketing advisor, Dani, here with a very special guest, Sarah Ramsey of Pitch PR, to answer some of your burning questions around marketing, around strategy, around entrepreneurship, and about PR. Hey, Sarah, welcome.
Hi, Dani. I am so happy to be here.
I'm so excited to have you because let me tell you how excited I am to have this episode, because this topic has really been very top of mind for me and for a lot of my clients over the last few months when it comes to PR and public relations. Because honestly, with social media taking such a big hit when it comes to getting organic reach, which is just, at first I thought it was me, but it's pretty ubiquitous. It's pretty everywhere. Being able to think about other ways of getting in front of your ideal audience on a big scale, like you used to be able to do with social media. So getting into articles, both on paper or online, or getting other people to talk about you is a really attractive alternative option. And of course, that's not even all that PR is. There's so much more to it. And that's exactly what you do.
That is what I do.
Oh my gosh. So to introduce Sarah, Sarah is a public relations expert, and she helps authors and thought leaders increase their name recognition and build that engaged audience. As a strategic communications leader working for the federal government and for nonprofits, she's been able to turn senior execs into household names. Superstar. And not only that, she also spent 15 years working in newsrooms, both as an in-house public affairs officer and as a staff writer for media outlets. Now, as the founder of Pitch PR, she advises authors, thought leaders, and entrepreneurs on how to grow that name recognition that we're all desperately seeking, get more media coverage, and build an engaged audience. So basically, you're a superstar for anything you would need PR related. Now, Sarah and I are longtime coffee pals, and our conversations often center around the realities and hardships of being solo founders. Sometimes tears are shed into our lattes, but we often devolve into food. In fact, as I was getting ready for this, I had a memory of the day that you and I first met. I think we were at that event, and you and I met because we were standing on the side reviewing the pizza options that were available and talking about which ones we liked best.
Yes, that is exactly.
And then we clicked, and then we got coffee, and Bob's your uncle. Here we are now.
Because at a business networking event, the food is important. So
it's really important, and it's just such a great icebreaker, and you can really tell a lot about a person by what they pick from the buffet line.
Very much so, yes. Yeah.
Well, this is The Table, and this is the audio dinner party for entrepreneurs, founders, and the like. And so I want to know that question that I ask everybody. What are you bringing?
Okay, mac and cheese, but not just any mac and cheese. The way I do my mac and cheese is I do caramelized onions, which I do myself. And I do baked mac and cheese, caramelized onions, and then top it with fried onions. So, and sometimes like sage if I'm feeling fancy. And occasionally I'll throw in like butternut squash and do like a whole, I mean, that makes it healthy, right? If you put a vegetable in there, it has to be healthy. So,
I mean, you had me at onions, but yes, keep putting in more veggies. It's absolutely healthy. Now, when you make your mac and cheese, do you do it with like a milk sauce, or are you more of a like?
yeah, I do. Whole nine yards. I do a bechamel and then melt the cheese in there and then toss the whole thing together and put it in the oven and then add more cheese on top and then add the fried onions on top and then, yeah.
Speaking my language. Okay, you're invited when this happens for real. Huzzah. I cannot wait. That sounds so good. All right. I guess we have to talk about PR or talk about marketing. And so I guess that actually is a really good place to start, which is I get a lot of people asking me questions about what is the difference between public relations, PR, and marketing. How do you explain the difference between those? How are they the same? How are they different?
Yeah, because I think sometimes it feels confusing because the same activities can be one or the other. They can be both. My definition is marketing is about selling a product. PR is about selling you, your
Mm,
ideas, your thoughts. It is the long game. Marketing tends to be a much shorter game. You run a social media ad, you get a customer, you get a client.
mhm.
PR, while PR can have that result, it is it is a much longer game. PR is really about building name recognition and trust with your audience. So even if it does have an immediate payoff, the the true payoff is a much longer game. And it is less about selling a thing and more about your personal brand, your even in your professional identity, but what you are thinking.
That is actually a really great way of looking at it, especially for entrepreneurs, especially for founders who so many of us are our own brand. Even if we have a different brand name, people are essentially buying from us. They need the trust, they need the awareness, and they need the affinity for the person for whom they're trusting behind the brand.
Because people don't buy, I mean, people do buy products, but they really buy who you are,
Mhm.
especially when you're in a service-based industry. When you want somebody to trust, when you want somebody to give you a lot of money and trust you enough to help them, to support them, do, whatever it is that they do, they have to feel comfortable with you. They have to know who you are. And I do think this works, even with product-based brands, Kellogg's, Nike, the people buy from them because they feel something.
Mhm.
And oftentimes they feel that they know in this day and age. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm going to get out of soapbox here. In this day and age, we all have parasocial relationships with brand names, whether it is a brand or a person. And we get that because we're all looking for community. We are all looking for connection. We are all looking to trust people and form relationships with people. And sometimes that relationship happens to be with a pair of sneakers or a bag. I have a Kate Spade bag that I freaking adore. And so now I'm predisposed to like any bags that Kate Spade puts out, because like I have this one that not only do I love, but every time I take it out, I get a compliment on it. And that makes me feel good. I trust the brand. And like that generates even more trust. So I think it works the same way with entrepreneurs. We want people to like us and trust us so they will buy from us. And that means letting people know us.
Absolutely.
I feel like we went like in a really big circle on that
No,
answer.
I think it's an important thing because I have the same conversation when it comes to what is marketing versus brand, right? Because they are same, they are very different. And I think PR also fits there if you think of it as being like a three-wheeled Venn diagram where
Yes. Yeah.
not all marketing is PR, not all PR is necessarily marketing, not all brand is marketing, and not all brand work is necessarily PR, but there is places where all three of those connect, and there's something times when those three are all exactly the same thing.
And you have to do all three. Like I think it's really important to, like, if you just try to focus on one, you're going to get somewhere, but you're going to miss a lot of opportunities.
Mm. And so when it comes to PR, I know that for a lot of especially newer entrepreneurs or newer people, especially out of corporate, who are not accustomed to having to develop their own personal brand, who do you, when do people need PR? Because a lot of people are like, I'm not ready for it. I'm not big enough for it. I don't even know how to do it. So, like, when should people be thinking about PR for themselves and as founders? And who is it actually for?
Yeah. So it sounds flippant when I say start now, but I really do seriously mean start now. And it sounds a lot bigger than it actually is. I think founders, especially new entrepreneurs who are just starting out, you're already doing PR. You may not realize it yet, but you are already doing PR. If you attend a networking event, you're doing PR. If you are Social media has some aspects of PR, if you're trying to grow your audience and get a message out there. So if you're doing that, if you're writing a post on LinkedIn or commenting on someone else's post, that is PR. If you are attending an event where you have a table or you're handing out brochures, you're doing PR. So I don't want people, especially new entrepreneurs, to think that it is like that there is a starting line and you have to meet a bunch of prerequisites before you are allowed to start. If you are talking to people, if you're talking to anybody, you are doing PR. So you don't have to wait for somebody to give you permission. You don't have to write a PR strategy before you start. If you are out there engaging with your audience, you are doing PR.
I love that. And I think that is so powerful because so often when I start the conversation with my clients, I'm a strategic marketing advisor, talking about how to leverage channels like that and whether or not that's a fit for them is always a part of the conversation. And I can't tell you how often that conversation is like, well, PR is getting into the Washington Post or getting into HBR. And there's so many more layers to that. And also, like, we're not just going to immediately land in the Washington Post or the HBR. And so let's talk about the different tiers of that because there is a national component, there's a local component, there's a one-to-one component of PR, which you just mentioned. So I'm curious to get your perspective on that
Yeah.
as well.
So what I tell my clients is, if you don't have name recognition right now, but if you're just starting out, if your name lands in the Wall Street Journal, it is probably not for a good reason.
There's good
Just
PR
saying.
and bad PR.
Just saying. Unless you are the scion of some family, like unless your name has already received recognition, if your name shows up, if my name shows up in the Washington Post tomorrow, again, it is probably not as the subject of the article. It is probably not for a good reason. So, um, I most people looking for tier one, and tier one is that national coverage, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the big names. Um, Going after that first is not actually going to have the result that you want, because even if you do get your name and your story, and it's possible, there are ways to do that, but even if you do get your name in there, it is so broad that it's just like going viral on social media. Going viral, getting 100,000 views for something doesn't mean that that's going to convert into customers or clients. Getting a story in the Washington Post doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to convert to customers or clients for you right away. Sometime down the road, after you've done the work to build and have an infrastructure to take advantage of that coverage, absolutely. But um, starting right off the bat, it is like, unless you just have a unique story that truly has national legs, it is really, it's difficult to get, but also it's not the best use of resources, because the result from it isn't, um, probably isn't going to get you what you need to get out of that early coverage. So going local, going regional, and that's geographical, and that's also in your industry. So almost every industry has some kind of trade magazine, podcast, blog, newsletter. I mean, everybody has a newsletter now, right? It's just like it used to be everybody had a blog. Now everybody has a newsletter or a YouTube channel or a podcast. The media landscape is so distributed. You can find somebody talking about your subject that you can use to get to the audience that is most likely to listen to you and act,
Mm-hmm.
and then use that to build.
I love that, because I think we all need to adjust our expectations for what that that looks like. And I think that also comes down to really understanding the broad scope and what you're trying to do. And that's a huge part of every conversation I have. It's like, well, what are you trying to do and who are you trying to talk to? Because if you show up somewhere, I mean, sure, being able to put on your website that you were featured in the Washington Post is really cool. It's good. But at the same time, at the end of the day, is that really getting you where you, in front of whom you need in order to generate business, in order to build that know, like, and trust relationship, which you've already mentioned is such a core part of the PR cycle.
Yeah. Yeah. If you are a brick and mortar business in Alexandria, getting coverage in USA Today isn't, it is not necessarily going to bring, it'll bring you attention, but it's not going to have the same impact on your business as, say, getting coverage in the Zebra or ALX Now, which are local outlets, because those are like, people who live here are going to read that and go, oh, there is a new coffee shop, salon, restaurant, whatever open. I want to go try them out. Where somebody is reading that in, USA Today, Wall Street Journal, and they live in Seattle or Chicago, they're more like, oh, that's interesting. That's a cool story. And that's as far as it goes.
Absolutely. And so with some of these more local publications, I've come across a lot of pay to play situations. And I'm curious to get your thought on, is it worth it to pay a couple $100s for a couple months of guaranteed features in a more local syndicated magazine, or is it better to really do your best to make it organic?
So I think the definitive answer to that is it depends.
Mm.
There's context that goes into that. But talking about, I know a lot of people look at especially local coverage and they automatically assume that it's pay to play. And a thing I want to address is that local media outlets are absolutely vital to our landscape. And this, again, my soapbox here, this is a much bigger picture, a much bigger issue. Independent local media is absolutely critical, but they can only exist if they can pay their, like all of us, they can only exist if they can pay their bills. And advertising has been like it used to be, newspapers, radio stations, TV stations, they made their bread and butter was ads. And that's before you could skip and streaming. That's before everything went digital. And so print ads may not mean as much anymore. So advertising, traditional Mad Men, style advertising doesn't have the same. So media outlets have had to find other ways to incorporate, to get that advertising budget. And so the sponsored content, the pay to play, is something that local papers are having to turn to. I said to pay the bills, to keep the lights on, pay their staff, which is incredibly important. So I don't think there's anything wrong with pay to play, caveating that everybody's upfront about that. It's sponsored content, but I don't think you have to do that. If your story is relevant, newsworthy, then you have a good chance of getting that coverage that you don't have to pay for it. But I will, and this is what I tell all of my clients. And this is not a bean counting thing. This is not a I scratch your back, you scratch my back sort of thing. But I think part of being a good business owner in a community is supporting other businesses, and supporting your local media outlets is an important part of that. So if you need to advertise something, buy an ad.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying do that so that they will print your press release, or they will attend your grand opening, or they will write a story about you, because that is really not how it works. You don't have to do that. But if you want a vibrant, independent media outlet in your community that functions and can write stories about you, when you have the means, buy an ad from them. It helps them, it helps you, it helps everybody. And you help build a relationship with them, which is an important part, I think, of then getting your news covered.
I love that answer, because it is very nuanced and always definitely does depend. And of course, you want to make sure that that publication actually reaches the people you want it to reach. That's important to you. That's, I think, the most important thing, because it is advertising at that point. Like, it's not organic, and not all marketing is always going to be organic. But you just want to make sure you're paying for the right eyeballs and not the wrong ones.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so as you're, going in and you're like, okay, you know what? I'm inspired. I want to create a PR strategy. What does that look like? I know this is a loaded question. We could probably be here all day about it, but at a really high level, like, what are some of the top things that you should be thinking about when it comes to thinking about how to incorporate PR realistically into your business development, if you will?
Yeah. So works on a micro and a macro level.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think the first question to ask is, who are you trying to reach? And then what do you want them to do? And that is, I think, critical for figuring out which PR activities you engage in. You're not going to pitch 20 different media outlets the same, and certainly not the same way. So where is your audience? Are they reading a paper? Are they reading newsletters, and which newsletters? Are they only on social media? Are they at events? Do you have to get to them in person? So I think knowing who you're trying to reach, and then knowing what you want them to do. If you need them to click a button, then a print ad, and I know that's marketing, but even like a print, like a news release, that's not going to drive the action you want. I think you really have to start with the foundations of, who do you want to reach, and what do you want them to do? And then keep that in mind as you're creating the PR content, as you're writing your press release, as you are pitching an article, as you're deciding what events to do. And at that event, are you handing out a thing? Are you just doing a sign? Do you have a QR code? All of that, all of your strategy comes down to, who are you trying to reach, and what do you want them to do with that information? So once you have that, I think the the easiest things to do are um, a press release is actually easy. Pitching is okay. I feel like there a bunch of people just went for not knowing why, just rolled their eyes and went, wait. A press release is easy.
Yeah.
No, come on, Sarah. No, I should say there's not a magic formula
Okay.
for a press release and to pitch a story. If it is relevant and newsworthy and you time it right and you have a relationship, or the reporter can see that you didn't just like go and pick a name out somewhere and randomly send it to them. Like there is a reason you are sending it to them, and there's a reason you're telling the story. You can get coverage that way.
Right.
So yes, so press releases and story pitches are a great way, and I do think they are low hanging fruit. Although again, I feel like a lot of people out there are going,
That's hard.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
In-person events, though, I think is maybe that is the easiest place to start. Dip your toe in, talk to people. Like I said, that is PR. Talking to people is PR. And so going to in-person events lets you refine your pitch, who you are, your brand message, how you talk to people, how people hear you, because you get automatic, immediate feedback from that conversation. So you know, how is your message landing? Because you know as well as I do that sometimes what you say isn't what your audience hears.
Mm-hmm.
So having that immediate feedback, I think, is helpful. So in-person events, press release.
I love that. And I love the idea of those in-person events because it's also like, even if you have a story idea, it's a great way to gauge whether or not other people think it's as interesting as you do
Yes.
very quickly. And I
Yep.
mean, going to in-person events is also the number one homework assignment I give every single one of my clients, because we spend a lot of time working on their pitches, figuring out their messaging, who they're talking to, what they need to say, and how they can resonate. And the only way to get used to it is to go out and say it. And to your point, getting yourself out there and talking is public relations. You need to build the relations with the public. And exactly to your point, that's a great way of getting started. And it is very intimidating, as somebody who is trying to figure out their own PR journey for themselves and on, like, how do I get myself out there more? It's scary. We're all too close sometimes to our own stuff to understand like what part of our story is really interesting. And I'm sure we will get to this in a little bit as to like the value of having someone else help you out there, because I think that's part of what we both play in a lot of people's businesses. But how do you know, aside from looking for people's reactions, like how do you know if something is newsworthy? Like you can always be pitching yourself, you can be pitching your business, but as like talk about me, but also just pitching topics that are tangential to you, but where you're not the core star. And so I'm curious to get like, how do you think about something that's newsworthy, that's worth trying to put in front of someone?
Yeah. It's so a little war story from this. So at NASA, we would often create media opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And I will preface this by saying we had it easy because, we had NASA TV. We had, if you're NASA, you call somebody and like, hey, we like to talk about this. Then they're like, tell me more. So it was, definitely easy. But my point there is that we were making the news ourselves. We weren't waiting for someone to grant us permission to make news on a subject. And often we would put content out. So like we would send, from NASA headquarters, we would send anywhere from 1 to like 4 press releases and media advisories on any given day. We would also put out feature stories on the nasa.gov website. And we would put a bunch of those out. every day. And there are times when the feature stories would end up getting more media attention and coverage than the press releases because somebody would pick it up, somebody would post it, somebody would tweet about it, somebody would put it on social media, and people would respond, and there would be like a little moment around it. And then a journalist would go, "Oh, people are talking about this. I need to be talking about this too." So you can drive the media conversation that way. And how you know that it is newsworthy is you have to be able to answer, why is this a story right now? Like, why is this story important at this moment in time? And why are you the right person to tell it? And some of that is looking for trends in the media
Mm-hmm.
and knowing when to jump in, because sometimes you don't want to be the first person to bring a topic up, but you
Mm.
also don't want to be the 15th. You want to you want a little momentum to build for a topic. And then you come in and say, well, actually, and you bring your part of the conversation to the front. If you wait too long, everybody's over it, everybody's moved on. If you get in too early, you might start something,
Mm.
but you also might start something and then somebody comes in and takes all of the attention away from you. So it is really the thing I tell people who want to do their own PR is you have to know the news you're going after. You don't necessarily have to read everything, but if you want to get in the New York Times, you need to be reading the New York Times. If you want it to get into Wired, you need to be reading Wired every day. What are they talking about? What are they what are the breaking news stories? A lot of, well, okay, like magazines like Wired, if they have issues, even if they're digital, they will have an editorial calendar, usually online, or you can ask. You can send them an email and ask. And they will have themed issues. This month, this issue, we're talking about this subject. And so sometimes you can wait and you know that, okay, the publication I want to get into is going to be talking about this subject during this month. Here's my piece of it. So I'm going to pitch them a story that is relevant to what they're talking about. And I think so. A thing I want to emphasize, because I think part of the figuring out is it newsworthy equation is we have to be a little bit, as entrepreneurs, we have to be a little bit self-centered, right? Like we have to think, our brand, what are we talking about, pushing our message out. But when we're pitching a story to media outlets, we also have to consider, what does their audience care about? And it's not even so much the media outlet themselves, it is their audience. Because you're not taught, the reporter is the medium, like the reporter is the pass-through. Their audience, their reader, their listener, their viewer is who you are talking to. So what does that person care about? So for your reporter to convince a reporter to run with your story, you have to show them why their audience cares about what you are saying at that time.
I
That
love
was a
that.
lot of information.
But I mean, it is a lot. There is a lot to it, but at the same time, it very much feels like knowing when something is newsworthy is one of those things, or just knowing what to pitch, when to pitch it, when it makes sense for you. Building that on your own strategy is something that, yes, it feels a little scary at first, as does starting a business, as does everything else that you're doing, but it's something that you can learn, and it's something that you can do. So I'd love to hear from you, because that's something that I know that you do every single day, is that you sit down with people and help them figure out what PR looks like for them, but also helping coach them on finding how to do this either themselves or, working with you. But so tell me a little bit more about like doing it yourself versus learning how to do it versus, trusting someone else to take this off your plate.
There is nothing magic about the process of PR. It is something you can learn. It is something anybody can do. And I know that sounds like I'm like talking myself out of out of work, but I truly believe that entrepreneurs, especially solopreneurs, don't do PR because they think they're not allowed to. I actually work with a client who, like, the look on her face when she's like, but I'm allowed to do this. It wasn't even a ability. It was allowed. It was permission. And you don't, nobody needs to grant you permission to do this. Where I think it helps to have a pro come in is that we're out here doing the work. And a lot of us are doing the work on our own, and it's a lot. And especially when you get to that point where you are growing and maybe like everything you're doing is paying off, which is fantastic. And then you realize that everything you're doing is paying off. And all of a sudden you're like, okay, wait, what do I, this is great, but I don't have enough time to do everything. You got into your business for a reason. You are good. You are brilliant at your business. Do your business. I think this matters for bookkeeping, tax preparation, PR, like some admin work. Like, if you enjoy that sort of thing, like if you want to be the type of business owner who does all of that, more power to you. If you want to be the type of business owner that does the stuff that you are brilliant at and focuses on that, bringing in the pros, like bringing in a PR pro is a great way to take that off your plate. And I do think I am hopefully clearly passionate about making PR accessible. Like that, it does not have to be the $10,000 a month contract. You do not, let's make it fit your resources. And I do think PR coaching is helpful if especially if you're just starting out and you don't have a lot of resources, getting somebody to give you that little bit of guidance on, yes, pitch this. Let me edit your press release. Let me help you write a pitch. Let me give you some expert on advice on like why this and not this. That I think can be super beneficial as a sort of a starting point to get you going and then let you grow into something bigger. But two important points there. Yes, anybody can do PR, but the other important point is if you have the resources to let someone take that off your plate, let someone take that off your plate.
I couldn't agree more. And I'll add one more thing, which is yes, you can do it yourself, but especially when it comes to something like PR, when you gotta sell yourself, and a lot of us are very uncomfortable doing that. To your point, am I allowed to do it? We're all too close to our own stuff. The number of times I've had conversations like, that is a really cool point. Why aren't you talking about that? Like, that's not interesting. I'm like, that is very interesting. And I guarantee you, if you told anyone that you were doing that, they would pick it up. It would be very cool. And so to have someone like you to be able to offer that outside perspective that we're all sometimes too close to is in itself just priceless.
Yes. Yeah. And I think talking to the media is a skill. I will say that. You don't need permission to do it, but talking to the media is a skill. And even if the only thing you did is a couple of hours of media training, that is so beneficial because the last thing you want is to have some PR work pay off in coverage, in interviews, and talking to a reporter, and then feel awful about it because you didn't say what you want to say, or you felt like you stumbled over your words, or you it wasn't the hit that you wanted it to be. I think I think a lot of people look at PR professionals and they think, oh, the spin room. You spin the news. And so it's kind of, maybe fake is too harsh, but it's a little mercenary. It's a little not authentic. I don't want to say that's not out there,
Mm-hmm.
but to me, that is not what PR is about. PR is about making sure that your message and your personality shows the way you want it to. That people don't get lost in, the things like, when I do media training for clients, we'll talk about how to answer a question, but we'll also talk about what to wear.
Yeah.
Because like not everybody knows that if you wear white, like a just white on a camera, it washes you out or sometimes makes you
Mm.
glow. If you wear patterns, it can look really weird if you're on camera. If you are, the last question, how to answer the last question that almost every reporter is going to ask you, which is a gold mine for your messaging. Things like that. It is so helpful to get a little bit of extra support like that so you show up like you want to authentically.
That's beautiful. I love that. And I think that it's hard as an entrepreneur, as a founder, as a solopreneur, as just somebody who's leading a business who's no longer in a corporate environment to feel the permission to be your authentic self and use that and know that that can be a really powerful way of growing your business. Like you are your best marketing, PR, brand, you name it, it is you. And so having the ability to have opportunities to show up and do that is just unbelievable. So I want to know, and I'm sure everyone listening wants to know, how can they get in touch with you? How can they learn more about working with you? Tell us everything.
So, easiest way to find me, my website is easy. It's just my name. So, www.sarah with an H, sarahramsey.com. And you can also, I am on Instagram as PR pinch hitter. Yes, I like sports ball. So I talk in a lot of sports metaphors. Sports and pop culture, that's my thing. But you can also reach me by email at sarah at sarahramsey.com. And I love to talk to people. Like I said, I am really committed to making PR accessible because all of us entrepreneurs are out here and it feels really lonely sometimes. I think I want to make sure that everybody succeeds. Like other small businesses, it's important that we all succeed. And I think PR is an important part of that. So like I'm happy to answer questions, happy to chat with people. Clearly I like to talk.
Okay.
I suppose
Yes,
that's a good thing to a good quality in a PR person.
it is indeed. I am, and I'll put all of that in the show notes. If you're interested, feel free to go in and you can click and easy to get in touch with Sarah. Join me in thanking Sarah for joining me today, for sharing all of your unbelievable knowledge, because PR is a kind of scary, unknown world. But, having someone like you help make it feel a little bit more accessible and giving us the permission that we don't need, but we feel like we want to go out, explore, and see how that can be a part of growing this these businesses, these things that we've decided for some reason to start, but love every minute of it, of this roller coaster that we're all on. So thank you, Sarah, for being here today. Can't wait for our next coffee date We'll talk more about croissants and pizza.
Thanks, Dani.
But
This has been a delight. I hope it's helped a lot of people, and thank you.
yeah, well, thank you so much to everyone listening for joining us on the at the table today. I hope this conversation gave you some really great, fresh insight, at least a boost of inspiration about how you own your brand, how you own yourself, and how you show up. And so, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow or subscribe so you don't miss any other conversations. And if you want to keep the conversation going, I would love to connect on Instagram at Mise en Plan or on LinkedIn. And those will always be in the show notes. So, see you next time. As always, I'll save you a seat. See you soon.